Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have a round 3 game to share with you from the 2022 World Blitz Chess Championship. On the white end, Ivan Cheparinov, and he's playing against Magnus Carlsen. There's one main takeaway for me from this one, and it comes out of the opening, a move, an idea Carlsen goes with. I wasn't too familiar with it out of this Closed Catalan. There's also an endgame plan Carlsen implements you may find instructive. Overall, it's a very high-quality game by both sides, and it's not until the late stage of the endgame, and when Cheparinov is living off of the increment, where there's a blunder. Now, it's as early as this move 6, where Carlsen expands on the queen side. Only after things are cool on the king side, he's completed development there. There's one square I want to draw your attention to out of this opening. It's c4. This is a sensitive square. Sensitive, why? Well, there's not a convenient recapturer of that point. The bishop is now on the long diagonal. What does this mean? Well, in many lines, black can actually go ahead and capture on c4. Who's going to be the one to recapture? It's now going to be down to one of the knights or the queen. Okay. The a5 move is, however indirect, having an influence on c4. Black has an eye on maybe going further with a4. This could maybe have some cramping effect, some domino effect on the entire queen side if this is allowed. It's not allowed in this game. Knight c3 is played. Healthy square for the knight. It watches over this pawn advance. To illustrate, if you're not playing, let's say, knight to c3, if you continued with, let's say, b3, a4 could still be played. Do you want to take as white away from the center? c4 would be that much more weak. The queenside pawns would basically all be weak. Do you want to maintain your structure? Develop the bishop? Prepare to meet AB with AB? Black may just go one step further. 8 moves in. Do you really want to deal with this pawn this deep in your house as white? This may even set the stage for a knight to be planted on b4, a piece that is not easily extracted. Applying pressure to a2, tying down a rook. You get the idea. This one pawn can be a menace to the entire white queenside. It stopped cold on this move 7 with knight c3. At the same time, we might say that c4 is now all the more sensitive because this guy can no longer control that square. In many lines out of the Catalan, it'll go to d2, watching over that point, as well as supporting an e4 break. Additionally, from d2, it stays out of the queen's way when she's on c2 to watch over c4 directly. Okay, in the game, knight c3, black reinforces his strongest pawn, b3 only now, b6, bishop b2, and where to go with the queen bishop. a6, where it puts pressure on the most sensitive square. Pop quiz as white. What would be your reaction to black's last move? Feel free to pause the video. Okay. Move played in the game, queen d3. It's not considered best. Considered best is this underdeveloping knight to d2, unleashing the bishop, maintaining this tension. If in this position you thought to yourself, well, just capture, notice what is happening if you go for this capture. Black is recapturing and has gained something. What is that something? Well, if we look at the structure right now, this is the one area where white is stronger. In comparing the c-pawns, this is a pawn of rank 4 versus a pawn of rank 3, and they are being exchanged. And in the process, a new square is opening up for black's queen knight. Okay, best in this case would be to maintain the tension. White goes with queen to d3, and this next move is the one takeaway, the main takeaway for me from this game. Carlsen's next move is b5, a very temporary pawn sacrifice. Play follows with c takes b, c takes b. This is going to lead to mass exchanges. We kind of from this point on end up fast forwarding through the middle game, and we get down to a very simplified endgame in short order. White picks up the pawn and is now in this, in a pickle, in a pin, and in just a few moves the pawn will be won back. I'd like to point out why maybe this knight d2 move is a better choice. You'll note after queen d3 and b5, white doesn't have the option in this position to grab space on the queen side with c5, because b4 would hit and you could already resign. Black will be winning material. However, if c4 was defended with the knight, b5 could be met with c5. It's a totally different structure. Okay, it's a new option for white, the c5 move with the knight on d2, rather than having the queen on d3. In this game, queen d3, b5 chop chop, knight takes on b5, and we get on with development, immediately making use of this newly opened c6 square. From here, a4, queen b6, just piling up, ready to get this pawn back soon, taking advantage of the pinned knight, knight e5, knight a7, and here come the mass exchanges, knight for knight, bishop takes pawn, AB pawns exchanged, queen rooks exchanged, queens exchanged, and we get into this ending where it's even going to simplify a little bit more soon. Bishop c2 and rook to b7. I thought when I initially skimmed through this game, I was wondering, what are you doing exactly? If rook c1, you could get out of that pin by flicking in bishop to a3 real quick if you wanted to. Okay, it's not really a big deal. It's one way out. Rook b7 in this game. Bishop takes knight. White has the bishop pair, but all pawns are on the same flank, so this knight is, he's ready to, the mobility of the knight is not in question. He doesn't have to go all the way to the queen side. There's no reason to go there, so perfectly content just sticking around on the king side. And after this last move, he's now exerting some pressure on e5. This is already a sort of an important moment in the game. It's not critical, but I think if white had made a different decision on this move 27, he would probably find it a little bit easier to play this ending. So I'll throw this one too as a pop quiz. What would be your way to react to black's move? How would you react to the threat knight takes pawn? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, the move played in the game is f4. It's still considered an equalish position, but you'll notice with f4, this knight now has a new square it could already think about jumping to. Computer points out that best is to defend with the bishop, making use of the fact that the bishop is poisoned because of back rank mate. So white could have played this, defended the pawn, and after maybe a flight square, just backed off. And the bishop would be a very convenient defender of e5, and also watch out for even rook c1 moves down the line. Okay, bishop c3 not played. f4 instead. Again, this knight is now a little jumpy, has that e3 square. From here we have the flight square, bishop f3, bishop f5, and now white makes the decision to exchange another set of minors. Bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop, and we enter this opposite color bishop ending. Now, why go for this capture? Well, I think it's related to the knight being a jumpy piece. It has that e3 square. Right around the corner, there might be rook to c1. You're in a pin. If you go over to defend, there's maybe knight to h2, winning a pawn, or maybe landing some fork. Maybe both. White doesn't want to deal with it. Knocks out the knight. Pawn takes. How to win this position? Okay, let's see Carlsen's approach in this opposite color bishop position. First, activating the king along the light squares. This is a two result position for black. Why is black in the driver's seat in this one? Well, what grabs my attention about this one is this configuration, considering the the H pawn and the G pawns. It's this one pawn here that is holding up two white pawns. And also black has a successful pawn break with with F6, increasing the pressure on the E5 point. First, he's improving the king as best he can. And now with this pressure here comes F6. You'll also note that this bishop is basically pinned to the first rank. If it's ever moving, for example, in this position right here, if it takes a step, now this rook could slide over, and this pawn is soon to be won. We can have G2 covered, no defending it. So it's a very passive position, still holdable, but very difficult, especially as the clock is, not soon to not be on white side. Here comes F6. E takes F, G takes F, and slowly what is happening? A passed pawn is being created, or at least it's narrowing down now to a 2-1 majority in the center for black. From here, ideally, well, for starters, you definitely want to avoid a rook exchange if you're going to try and win this. Having it stripped to opposite color bishop specific, it's almost certainly going to be a draw, so got to keep the rooks on. And how exactly to position your pawns in this ending? In a way so that it tries to limit the dark square bishop. You want to try and stay strong as black on the dark squares. Your bishop has the light, let the pawns control the dark. And soon in this time pressure, this is where we have a mistake by white on this move 48. He ends up dropping the bishop back. Time pressure gets the best of everybody. It's kind of, I don't know, a little bit odd. I guess he didn't see this next idea by Carlsen, which is to plant the king on a secure square. He could have continued checking the king, and I don't know exactly where the king would go, where, it can no longer be checked. So best is rook to d8 to just keep checking, and it's going to be really irritating. You could even still think about keeping the bishop around on b4 to bother the base point e5, but it ends up going to this very passive square e1, and from here we have the idea bishop f5. See where the king is going? This is a perfect pocket for the king. There will be no checks. And now it's all about targeting e4, and there's really nothing white could do about it. So what is try to check? At this point, the king is ideal, the rook is ideal, the pawns, they shouldn't go anywhere. And it's just about repositioning the bishop. You want to get it on this diagonal. How to get it there? First bishop d7. This is cut out. He tries to get here. That's cut out. But now there's no cutting out this move. It's defended, and soon we're going to have the coordination on e2. And just like that, the position collapses. White resigns. This pawn now will fall. White took in this ending a little bit too, he was a little bit too passive in time pressure, I guess we might say, dropping the bishop back like that. e2 will now fall. There's no real try now for white. Here's one of the many ways this game could continue if there wasn't resignation. Computers even suggesting just go to g2. Something like this. The bishop could go here. Maybe the rook is scared away. Maybe this rook comes back here. Pawn runs. Could always give these checks. Could even consider improving the king in this specific case without fear of this check because the bishop's watching over that square. This is one of the many ways black could maybe have made progress if the game continued. A lot of ways to do it when this pawn is gone and you're working with two connected passed pawns. Anyhow, let's have a look at the tail of the tape on this one, and we could see just how accurate the game was. That was the big shift in the evaluation, that endgame. Not a big shift, but giving up the bishop for knight, going into the opposite color bishop ending. If we go back to this point right here, after bishop to a6, it's that reaction, queen d3 rather than knight to d2. A very technical point right out of the opening, but that's where there's a, however slight, some dip. It's even from that point, and, you know, only until the late stage did we have the blunder with the bishop going to e1, assuming that very passive post. In the end, we have a handful of inaccuracies, one mistake for Cheparinov, and pretty squeaky clean for Carlsen there, 97% accuracy after all is said and done. Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comments section below. Hope you enjoyed it, and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.